So on the back side, we have this graph. There will be a graph like this. It won't be identical, but it'll be very similar. In this particular situation, we're talking about a runner that we recorded her first 10 minutes of her run and her different speeds. So obviously when she started, when she was standing there, she wasn't traveling at all, but then she started picking up the pace, and then she slowed down a bit. Who knows, maybe because there were steeper mountains. Maybe she went really fast right here because she was running downhill, or maybe she was just sprinting and then got tired. Who knows? But you got to understand that as the minutes went on, her speeds varied, okay? So there are several of these questions, or several questions that regard to this graph. On the midterm, there's only one, okay? So let's look at number 13. It says, find the average rate of change. First thing we need to know is what that means. So underline it and then write slope. It's just rise over run, guys. That's it. You need to know that the words average rate of change means slope. That pops up. I mean, we talked about it already, but it comes out in every math class from here on out. Whenever they refer to average rate of change, they're talking about slope, rise over run. And it says find the slope for minute 2 to minute 4. I hope you guys changed that typo right there. Anyway, so from minute 2, it's right here, to minute 4, it's up here. So we really want to write down the coordinates 2, 6. Let's write that down. To minute 4, which is 4:12. And what do we do from there? We find the slope using the slope formula. What is the slope formula? In case you forgot, it's y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And I always begin with the divisions. And of course, this is your x value, your y value, your x value, your y value. This is your first point, so put 1s on the x and the y. This is your second point, so put 2s on the x and the y. And then plug in your values accordingly. So y2 is 12, y1 is 6, x2 is 4, x1 is 2. So your answer up on top, 12 take away 6 is 6. The bottom, 4 take away 2 is 2. So the average rate of change is 3. Okay, that's your answer for number 13. So there's only one of these questions on the midterm, but of course we put several so you could practice looking at a graph. And they ask you to find the same thing, the slope for different minutes, different coordinates. Number 17 is interesting. Whoops, scratch that out. Typo. Number 17 is interesting. It says, which 2 minutes would you select for a line that best fits the data? So obviously there's different answers that different people could give and justify, but there's some that are absolutely wrong. Let me actually draw a line right here. So if I were to pick this point and let's say that point, that'd be a decent line that best fits. That'd be pretty good, right? But if I were to pick these two, that'd be a horrible line that best fits. So you want to pick points like that would be horrible because it's too far above. You want to pick 2 points. The first one and this one are all right. The first one and the second to last, it's all right. The first one and the last one's not that great. Okay? So as long as you pick some that make sense, like this one and that one, that would also be all right. So minute 2 to minute 9. That's not the only answer, right? But that's decent. It has points on both sides. It kind of represents the whole thing. So you get the idea. On number 18, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form. So what is slope-intercept form, guys? We need to know what that is. Y equals mx plus b, right? So we want it to look like y equals mx plus b. And they give us some information. They say that our line passes through this coordinate, this x and this y value, this point, and is perpendicular. So what the heck does perpendicular mean? Opposite, reciprocal, m value, right? Opposite reciprocal slope. So if you don't know the vocab, you're not going to be able to even know how to start this question. So they indirectly give us a slope. They tell us that our line is going to be perpendicular to this line. And again, perpendicular means that you take this slope that they give you and you're going to change it opposite reciprocal. You're going to change the sign, making it a negative, and then you're going to flip the fraction. And if you're like, that's not a fraction, yeah, just put it over 1 and then just flip it. So it becomes a negative 1/3. So your slope is really negative 1/3. That's all we need from that equation. You are not going to use y equals 3x plus 1 anymore. That's it. Just m equals negative 1/3. And we also know that we have a point right here, the point -9, -5, which is really an x value and a y value. Okay, so if we have a point and a slope, is that good enough for slope-intercept form? Not really. It's good enough for point-slope form. And I hope we remember point-slope form. And if we don't, let's zoom in here and jot down what point-slope form is. And again, it's kind of like y equals mx plus b, but there's no b. It's really y minus y1 equals m, parenthesis x minus x1. And the x1, y1 come from the point. So the -9 goes over here, the -5 goes over here. And of course they will change to plus 5 and plus 9 because the minus will change to plus plus. Anyway, now that we know what point slope form is, and now that we actually know the point and the slope, let's just plug it all in. When you plug it in, please write it with blank spots. That way you don't make any mistakes. So the y1 value is -5, the m value is -1/3, and the x value is -9. Change the minus to plus, and that's your equation in point-slope form. However, they want it in slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept's y equals mx plus b. It does not have the parentheses. So whenever you have something on the outside of parentheses and you don't want the parentheses, all you have to do is distribute it, right? So let's distribute. Let's change this to y equals mx plus b. When we distribute -1/3 times x, that's easy. It's -1/3 x. -1/3 times +9. Put the 9 over 1 if you want. Or you could do it with the calculator, and you will get -3. Bring down the equal sign. Bring down the y, the plus, the 5. And there's your new equation. It's almost in slope-intercept form. All I have to do is get rid of that 5 by subtracting 5. Subtracting 5. Your new slope-intercept form equation, the answer is y equals -1/3 x minus 8. Ta-da. Piece of cake. That was easy. Number 19, I guess it's not exactly the same. The same knowledge is needed, but it's way easier. What does parallel mean?
Same slope.
Same slope. So same slope, same m value. So what's our slope going to be? The same as this guy, which is 5. So we could put m equals 5. That's our information. And what else do they give us? The y-intercept, also known as the b value, right? The b value happens to be 7. So if you know the m and you know the b, then you could just jump right into y equals mx plus b. It would be pointless to do point-slope form. You have a slope, you have a y-intercept, you might as well write in slope-intercept form because that's what they're asking for. Y equals 5x plus 7. There it is. That's your answer. All right, let's jump to something more fun. Yeah, when I say fun, I mean ridiculous. I do not like this problem, but a very similar problem is on the midterm. And as I was doing it on paper, I realized that there's not enough space here, so you might want to do some work on your notebook or write super tiny. But the data below represents a relationship between the total minutes and total calories burned on an intense workout of a certain athlete. So at minute 17, this guy burned 133, or this girl, I don't know. At minute 24, 187 calories, 39, 381, 42, 409, 60, we don't know how many calories this athlete burned, and we will find that out. I did forget to ask that down here, but we do need to find out that missing value. So question 20 says, use a prediction equation before rounding to predict the missing value. It says before rounding, so we want decimals. So when you look at it on your multiple choice test, it's going to look really ugly. It's going to have some nasty decimals. Don't be scared. All right, let's do this right now. It says use the first and fourth ordered pair. So what is the first ordered pair? 17, 133. Okay. And how about the fourth ordered pair? What's the fourth ordered pair? 42 and 409. Okay. So we have those two coordinates. We want to write a prediction equation. Well, what's the only thing we could do with two coordinates? The slope, right? And slope formula. So let me zoom in because, like I said, it's hardly any space. The slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And where do we get these x and y values from the coordinates? X, y, x, y. Your first point, put the 1s on them. Second point, put the 2s on them. So I highly recommend to always begin your slope with the division and the subtraction symbols, and then plug in your values accordingly. So let's go with the y2, which is 409 up here, the y1, which is 133 right here, the x2, which is 42, and the x1, which is 17. So we definitely need a calculator. Let's get a calculator. Thank you for your calculator help. We said the top one was 276 and 25. Okay. So this is our slope, and could we convert that to a decimal? Because on the answers, it's going to be a decimal. 11.4? 11.04. Okay, very important. So this is our slope right here. This is what we're going to use. So what do we have? We have a slope, and we write it as a decimal because they ask us to, and they use it as a decimal. And we have some points. So what form would be good to use? Point slope form. So let's move over here and let's write down the point slope form equation. And when we actually plug in our x1 and y1 values, we end up with y minus y1, which happens to be 133, equals m, which we said is the disgusting decimal 11.04, x minus x1, which is 17. Okay, now the prediction equation is going to be written, when you look at your multiple choice answer, it's going to be written in y equals mx plus b form. It's not going to be left in point slope form. So we're going to have to do some math, and again, the calculator is your friend, right? 11.04 times x. 11.04 times x is 11.04x, but 11.04 times negative 17 is what?
187.68.
Okay, and we end up with still y minus 133 on the left. So let's get rid of that minus 133 by adding 133. Cancels. Adding 133. And I apologize for the lack of space, but here's your answer. Y equals 11.04x minus what? Somebody with the, okay. Thank you for that. Negative 54.68. All right. So this is the prediction equation that they're going to have on the multiple choice. Well, not the exact one, but this is what you would find if you were actually taking the midterm right now. I do want to say that I believe on the midterm, and I'll say this right now, even though when we do the slope on the midterm, I believe this goes out 3 decimal places, and this might be like a 5, 6, or 7, which would change this up 1. Okay, so make sure you actually change that on the midterm itself. Anyway, that's our prediction equation, but how about that missing value? How do we get that missing value? Plug in 60. So everybody with the calculator, you could just say 11.04 times 60, minus 54.68. So go ahead and do that with the calculator. 11.04 times 60 minus 54.68. And say again.
607.72.
So that would be your missing value that belongs right up there. But don't write it in there. Don't write it in there. Why not? Because you're going to do another practice problem just like this down here. So number 21, it's the same thing. The only difference is that they're telling you to do different coordinates. Instead of the first and the fourth, they want the first and the third ordered pair. So it's the same chart, just different coordinates, just so you can have more practice, okay? So since I explained the first one, and I hope we understand it, I hope you guys could get through this one. The answers are provided in the back wall right there, and they'll also be provided on Edmodo, so you could verify your answers. Let's jump to 22 and 23. It says, graph and state the domain and the range. Okay, so we need to remember that absolute value equations or functions end up producing V-like graphs, like a V. It's either opening up or down, might be wide, might be narrow. But when we look at quadratic equations with the power of 2, x squared, that produces a parabola, which is a U-shaped curve. Okay, so let's go up to number 22, and let's find the most important point, which is the coordinate HK. What's that coordinate? Negative 1, 2. Again, you think opposite on H. Okay, think opposite on H, take K for what it is, negative 1, 2. So if you go negative 1 on the X, positive 2 on the Y, that would be your most important point right there. And you know what? Maybe I should jot down the notes for this. This is the notes for an absolute value function. Your A value is kind of like your M, your rise over run. And then you have X minus H, and then you have the plus K at the very end. And the minus sign in front of the H, that tells you to think opposite of whatever you see. That's why your H value is actually negative 1. Your K value says plus K, so you take that for whatever it is. Positive 2, it's a positive 2 right there. And again, the A value, I did it in blue to help you remember that it's kind of like the slope of a line. Now remember, this is not a line. This is like, it's like a V, okay? So here's our most important point. The A value tells us if it opens up or down. What do you guys think? Does it open up or down? Down, because the A value is negative. And is it wider than usual or narrower than usual, or is it just a regular V? Wider. It's wider because it's closer to 0. Anytime you get closer to 0, it gets flatter and flatter. It's called a vertical compression when you talk about transformations. Anytime you get further away from 0, it's a vertical stretch, which means that it gets narrower. Anyway, from this most important point, I'm going to go down 1 over 2. So down 1 over 2. Put a dot right there. And then continue to go down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. But do not draw your line, because it does not go this way forever. Remember, this was the highest point. This is the most important point. You just have to go down 1 and over 2 in the other direction. And this is not a parabola. This is a V-like graph. So it should be exactly that. Some people actually drew this on previous quizzes or tests like a curve. That's incorrect. It's a V. It's like if you had one line this way, one line that way. Anyway, how about domain and range? The domain are your X values, and the X values, the X number line is going left and right, so we got to think of this graph. Does it go to the left forever? Yeah. Does it go to the right forever? Yes. So we would say that the domain is X is really all real numbers, because it goes to the left and right forever. Okay. So there's an answer. How about the range? The range are your Y values. Does this graph go up forever? No. Does it go down forever? Yeah. Okay, so what's the highest point?
2.
The highest Y value is 2. So it's at 2 or below 2. So we're going to say Y is less than or equal to 2. And that's your range. And that's about it with number 22. Now number 23 is pretty much the same thing, but instead of a V-like graph, it's going to be a U-shaped curve. And The A value is not the slope. I mean, it still tells you if it opens up or down, if it's wider or narrower. But remember, in parabolas, we said that the A value of 1 provided us the pattern of 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. We need to have this pattern memorized for parabolas, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. So the vertex, the most important point, like always, is the coordinate what? You know what? Let me jot down the notes for this. There it is. It's almost the same thing as the absolute value one. The only difference is that A is not the slope right here. Okay, A is the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. Now, if A were different, if it were 2, then you'd have to modify the outputs by multiplying by 2. If A were 3, multiply the outputs by 3. If A were 1/2, then multiply these outputs by 1/2. Okay, so A is just the pattern that you're using, and it really does tell you still if it opens up, down, if it's wider or narrower or regular. Anyway, the vertex is HK. Think opposite on H. That is 2, -5. So let's go to 2, -5, which is way down here. What's the next thing we do after drawing the axis of symmetry? What's the next thing we do after doing the vertex? Draw the axis of symmetry. Got ahead of myself. There's the axis of symmetry. What if I asked you for the equation of the axis of symmetry? You guys remember that? Yep. X equals what? 2, the x value of your vertex. So this is the vertical line that passes the x-axis at 2. That's the line that's going to provide a reflection. So again, the A value being 1, right here, it allows us to use this pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9 from the vertex. So 1 over, 1 up. Let's put a dot right there. Go back to the vertex and go 2 over, 4 up. So 2 over, 1, 2, 3, 4 up. Let's put a dot right there. Go back to the vertex and go 3 over, 1, 2, 3, 9 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Way up there. So now that axis of symmetry is going to allow us to mirror it over to the other side. So a point right here, a point right there, and a point over here. All we need to do now is draw the parabola right through those points. And this is a U-shaped curve. It's not a V. And let's go back and state the domain. What's the domain? Does it go to the left forever? Does it go to the right forever? Yes. I mean, you're probably thinking, no, it goes up. Yeah, but it goes this way and that way. Like this parabola will exist at -5. It's just going to be way up there off the graph. It'll exist at -20. It's just going to be way up there off the graph. So the domain is x equals all real numbers because it really does go to the left and to the right forever. How about the range? The range are your y values. Greater than or equal to the lowest point of this parabola, your y value of the vertex, which is -5. Greater than or equal to. All right, so I'm stopping this video right here. There's still several questions that you could go back and work on this back side of the first page. I guess we could call it page 2.